Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy, where we follow real-life people on their therapeutic journeys. In this week's episode, we're catching up with David, who's made some big changes in his life over the last year of participating in therapy, but still has a big hurdle when it comes to relationships and finding love. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified as new episodes are released, and do follow my Instagram at Alex Howard Therapy for daily inspiration and support. David came to In Therapy to work on his depression and has made huge improvements over the last year, leaving an unsustainable living situation, finding a more rewarding job, and focusing on self-care. Despite all of this, there is still a piece missing: finding a romantic partner. Last time we learned that David has begun dating, and I'm particularly keen to see if there have been any developments. David, it's good to see you.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking as we're getting into December tomorrow, and it's we're approaching the end of the year. As you look back on this year, I mean, I guess it's just over a year that we've been in this process together. I'm wondering how you feel about the progress that you've made, the things that have changed. I mean, there's the new job, there's the new home, there's going on a third day. I'm wondering, like how you feel towards yourself, really, where you are and what's happened.
I do feel a lot better. I think it's. Yeah, I think I've sort of learned a fair bit about myself and about how to not so much control things, but sort of manage things. I hesitate to use the word, but I do feel a lot more positive about things.
You have to tell anyone, which is between you and me.
Yeah. No one else is going to see this. So yeah, I mean, and so so I'm sort of grateful for that, and grateful for sort of just getting through the last year.
Yeah. What do you? I'm interested in, particularly for a couple of reasons, in what you feel of the work we've done so far has been most useful. And I'm interested partly from the point that it's always interesting to me because it helps. It helps kind of as I work with other people, like what's helpful. But also I think it's sometimes helpful perhaps for you to just reflect a little bit and go, actually, these are the places that you feel have made the impact.
It's kind of a strange one to answer because I think there's been a lot, but the one thing I find myself recommending to other people is that sort of idea of sort of meditation and that kind of body scan thing. And because even today I had a conversation with two workmates which kind of took quite a dark, desperate turn.
I'm intrigued.
Well, one of my colleagues is been going through quite a lot. He's had a lot of health problems, both his physical health and he's got a few mental health issues. He's definitely depressed, but he's just not seeing anybody about it or talking about it or seeing his doctor or and he fucking loves a moan. But every so often he just will stray onto things which you think, yeah, that's a bit of an alarm bell. So yeah, he's working at least sort of 10 hours a day. He's very worried about his health. And yeah, he's just on the edge all the time. And he's a nice enough guy. He's, I like him, but and I have sort of said, look, you need to set boundaries and you need to start at a certain time and finish at a certain time and do something to sort of draw a line under the day.
So in terms of what you can see that's helped you, what you're saying is that that lack of talking and that lack of boundary for him, you can see in you how that's made a difference?
Yeah. And also, as I say, one of the things that I've recommended to him is that, he sort of starts doing like that kind of meditation or body scan or whatever, and just take time out to sort of either do it at the start of the day or do it at the end of the day, or just sort of like use it as a sort of demarcation.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, sometimes I go for a walk and, I'm like, well, do it at a particular time and, do it every day at the same time, and just try and use it as a way of exercising some of that stuff.
Yeah. So it sounds like the meditation definitely has become a bit of a cornerstone, really, in terms of your stability and your mood.
It's something I do pretty much every day.
Yeah, which is great. Great. What else do you think has been helpful? Like, what else do you find yourself reflecting on or coming back to or using?
I find myself a lot of the time coming back to the sort of old Jiminy Cricket, the voice stuff, and I still get it. I still get it a lot. But
don't worry, I do too. It's what you do with it, which is what matters.
Yeah, exactly. So, at least you don't get it in my voice, or maybe you do.
not yet. Day comes, I'll let you know. But so in terms of it sounds like the awareness of that.
Yeah, the awareness of it, and just that sort of recognizing it and recognizing, I don't feel a spiral as much as I did before. I feel that that's better.
Yeah, it feels like to me that whereas before your mood could sort of do that, and I remember I think we had a session on Zoom maybe 6-8 months ago where we were talking, and we had a session in person as well, where we were talking about what happens when you go down and how you get through that and how you support yourself through that. And then just as we talk about it now, I'm mindful there just seems to have been less of that that's happened. And I know there have been some times there's been some quite strong anxiety and panic feelings. But again, it sounds like you've been more able to sort of manage it as it's happened. But there just seems to be a bit more stability in terms of your mood.
I think so. I mean, I think it's definitely, it's still happened the occasional time, but it's happened a lot less. And I think I've kind of recognised what's happening instead of sort of panicking about it, and just let myself go through it. Whereas before I think probably I tried to fight it and stuff or whatever, and just made it worse, or I panicked and that made it, So it's still happened occasionally, but it's it just didn't feel like the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me as well, and I'm interested in how it feels to you, but it strikes me that you seem less at the mercy of your own mood and thoughts, and not the control is really the thing we're aspiring toward, but it does feel like you're more able to influence and less a victim of the kind of changing circumstance of your inner landscape, where there'll be times in the past where it would just feel impossible and bleak, and you'd shut down, and it would be hard to get out of that place. It's not that you can't go into that place, but it just seems like you feel more empowered to me somehow in how you are with your kind of mental and emotional life.
I think so. I mean, I still go to those places sometimes. I do still have my bleak episodes, but it just feels like I recognise what's happening, and sort of the best way of managing it sometimes is not to fight it and just to let it happen, and know that, okay, I'm going to feel like shit, but I'll feel better tomorrow.
I think that's the difference, because when we really fight those places, it's because we're terrified of them.
Yeah.
Like we feel like they're going to annihilate us. Like if I go down this hole, I might never come out of it again. When it's like, okay, my mood feels low, I feel a bit shit in myself, I feel anxious, but I kind of know that it's going to pass, and it's going to pass in a day or so.
Yeah.
It's easy just to sort of go through it, and it's not pleasant, and it's not a nice place to be. But in a sense, what you resist will persist anyway. So the kind of pulling back and fighting is in a sense feeding the pattern, as opposed to kind of gliding through it a bit more. I also think the changes that you've made in job and home environment, I think, have also been an important part of it, because in a sense, your outer life is mirroring the changes in your inner life. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like you're in a job that feels a bit more interesting and more engaging, and you've managed to extricate yourself from a home environment that wasn't feeling good, and somehow those differences is also a reminder that you are the architect of your life, not the victim of your life, in a sense, that you are able to influence and change those things.
I suppose it does look a lot more positive, but then again, none of you saw me sitting in my pants at 2 a.m. this morning, drinking brandy and watching Justified on Netflix or whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, I'm not joking. That did. I couldn't sleep. I'm not saying you are joking. That was what I was doing.
And I'm also not denying. Yeah. I want to be clear. I'm in no way trying to gloss over the low times that still happen. But what I'm looking at is the trend and the bigger picture, in a sense, of what's happening.
But I mean, I think you're also right in that, I had the freedom to do that. I had I could go and sit in my front room in my pants and drink.
And, could have done that with the techno housemate.
I just wasn't as comfortable doing it with the techno sort of housemate. And the job is different. It's got its own challenges, but it does feel like I'm doing something much more positive and much more proactive.
Yeah,
in a way. And I think, actually, in the same way that I'm managing myself, a lot of my job is sort of has a certain amount of diplomacy in managing people and managing relationships with organisations and stuff. And so, I think that's been good.
Yeah. So bringing it back to the fundamentals, it sounds like the meditation piece has been, it sounds like the most important piece in many ways.
I don't know if it's the most important piece, but it's definitely the thing that I recommend to people.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's the most tangible piece.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the easiest thing to explain to somebody in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all something that you come back to each day that becomes a routine and becomes a practice. And then it sounds like the inner critic piece has been important in terms of getting some distance and space from that. It sounds like addressing the thing, because I think the other thing is one can sit on the sofas and have the conversations, but if it doesn't result in actual change in one's outer life, after a while, if anything, one becomes more frustrated, because it's like, I'm talking about the stuff and I'm seeing the stuff, but my life's still not where I want it to be.
Yeah.
So the acting on that in terms of, the job, the home environment, the sort of pursuing the kind of relationship path, that is the actualization, in a sense, of the internal work that's happening. What do you feel you need for the next chapter, like looking into next year and the work that we're doing together, but also in terms of things in your life that haven't yet been addressed or you would like to address? What's your sense?
I mean, I still, I'm still finding the whole relationship thing difficult. I'm finding it very hard to be proactive on dates. I mean, part of that is just I haven't had time. I've been working constantly. But yeah, so I need to sort of find some way of being more confident and building up that confidence in myself, which I still think I believe they're a critic too much. So that's definitely something I feel I need to address.
I mean, in some ways, there's sort of the big three fundamentals in one's life, like where they live, what they do, and who they're in relationship with, right? And it's like 2 out of those 3 now are in a decent place.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but then whose life is perfect?
Yeah.
But like in a decent place. And the inner critic piece, like I'm interested, the kind of being busy at work is a valid reason some of the time.
Yeah.
If it's the case that one's all a bit like your friend you were describing, someone's always busy at work, that makes me suspicious, because it's almost like then that becomes an avoidance distraction of not dealing with the thing we want to deal with. Say a bit more about the inner critic as it's been coming up in these recent few weeks or month or two, like particularly around either this woman that you're seeing for a third time, or when you think about putting yourself out there a bit more proactively, like what? Yeah. Is it more of the same we've talked about, or is there a bit more clarity around it?
I think there's a bit more, there's more recognition of it, but yeah, I do tend to agree with it.
So that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
That in a sense you collude, like
Yeah.
you get sucked in by it.
So it's like, yeah, you're right. I am sort of, so yeah, so I need to not agree with it so much.
Give me some examples of some of the things it says that you're agreeing with.
Just that, a particular person is out of my league, which probably are. So it's like, I'm like, yeah. And I think probably, for a lot of people, they would just go, yeah, that's why I'm going to go after them. Whereas for me, I'm like, yeah, no, you're right.
What's your fear of what would happen if you went for someone that didn't reciprocate that? Because the truth is, I don't think we get to define our own league, do we?
Yeah.
Our league gets defined by if there's such thing as leagues. I mean, because it's. I don't think it's necessary. People can get caught in a kind of hierarchical, like that person's that beautiful, that person's that beautiful, that person's that beautiful, that person's that intelligent, but it isn't really a hierarchical. It's more, at least I think it's more of a where is their chemistry and where is their match, and you can have one person that's aesthetically very beautiful and someone that's less so, but then the other person's really funny and engaging, and the other one, like there's lots of ways that matches sort of come together.
But I think when you're sort of doing the sort of internet day, and I'm by no means an expert or even a novice. Until you make that initial contact, you don't know whether there's chemistry or not.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's getting to that stage. I always find difficult.
Yeah, well, I think that's the challenge, isn't it? That in a sense, your inner critic is paralyzing you from taking action in the first place. So you actually don't get to discover. It's almost like what you're doing is you're rejecting yourself before you give someone else the chance, because it's safer for you to reject yourself than to put yourself out there and then risk someone else rejecting you.
Yeah, probably.
But it's interesting because you're also someone that is able to take some risks, like you took a risk in terms of the job, in terms of home environment. Like, I'm wondering why it's more challenging in this context.
I don't know, and I guess, to be honest, those didn't really feel like risks that much.
But I think they were challenging at the time. Certainly in terms of the living situation, I think there was a going round, and it felt to me that you felt quite stuck in that for a while.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the job thing was a little easier because you kind of started to put yourself out there, and it got its own momentum. So you got pulled. You had the 3 offers, and you kind of got pulled along a little bit by the momentum of that, which made it easier. But you still had to take that initial right. I'm going to put myself out there and do some interviews and see what happens.
Yeah.
So what helped you do that in that context?
Money. It was more money.
So the allure of a paycheck in a new relationship might get you over the line.
Yeah. So yeah.
Because I think part of what happens is there's definitely a place in you that wants to meet someone and get out there. And then I think what happens is it feels a bit difficult and a bit uncomfortable. And then you focus on all the reasons why it's not going to work and someone's not going to be interested. And then that kind of paralyzes you then from moving forwards. Whereas the truth is, you in a basically happy, loving relationship would have an enormous impact on the quality of your life, because and I'm certainly not into the idea that one needs to be in a relationship to be happy. Of course they don't. But there's also a human want/need towards connection and love and having that sense of emotional closeness and intimacy with someone in our lives. And so that not acting upon that impulse, is it, particularly when it's there, because we recognize it's there, is a kind of form of self-rejection in a sense. Like it's like saying to that part in you that wants that connection and wants that intimacy, no one's going to want you, no one's going to be interested, just get over it. You are not necessarily consciously doing it, but you are ultimately rejecting yourself in that way. Because, the more we talk about it and the more I reflect on it, the more I find myself thinking that, and I know I said it to you before, perhaps not quite as strongly, but it does feel like the most important piece in your life, which is not currently where you want it to be. And that might not have been true a year ago, because there were these other things that needed addressing, which were also important. But it feels like focusing in other areas, there's a sort of diminishing returns to those. Whereas a significant change in your relationship life would be a significant change in your whole life in terms of kind of quality. And I do think it's interesting that there is this sort of rejecting of yourself that comes in, like, because we've talked quite a lot about the things you need to do, like get up an internet dating profile, get some feedback from trusted sources, start messaging people, start going on some dates. Like, I feel like what you need to do. Yeah, but it's just. But it's not. But it's just getting out of one way. Yeah, and it sounds like and judging yourself for that and beating yourself up for that. It's not helpful. You're not doing it to be difficult with yourself. You're doing it because of what comes up gets in the way. And it definitely sounds like in part that is the. What exactly? If we were sat at home now, and you sat at home on your own, and you were thinking about messaging someone on one of the you had your profile up, and someone messaged you, you were going to reply, or you were going to send the first message. Yeah, well, what do you say to yourself? I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it's something like, they're not going to be interested, or they're not, you're not in their league, or, you're right. Because that's sort of what you've hinted towards so far.
Yeah, I just find it difficult making that first sort of contact, or that first message, even. It's like,
What do you feel when you think about doing it? Like, yeah, what's the felt sense?
I just feel a bit queasy. It's not something that comes particularly easy to me.
So you feel a bit queasy, a bit queasy, a little bit uncomfortable in your body.
Yeah.
And there's some sort of idea that if I do this, they might not reply, or they might reply in a way which doesn't feel good, or.
Yeah, both of those. But then there's also that sort of fear that they might reply.
That might be worse. Right?
Yeah. So it's, yeah.
And then in response to that, you then just don't do it generally, right? Like, it's easier not to do it.
I don't know if it's easier. It's just, I just kind of, I suppose, freeze, and just don't do it. It doesn't feel like it's the easier option. It doesn't, neither of the options feel particularly easy or hard.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then forget about it.
Yeah. So there's a sort of avoidance distraction strategy that then comes.
Yeah.
In. Yeah. What do you think you need from you in that moment to be able to do it differently?
Probably a kick in the arse and some ecstasy. I don't know. I do.
Kick in the arse I can do. Ecstasy is outside of my remit, I'm afraid.
Well,
But ecstasy might be the result of natural ecstasy might be the result of actually following through.
Yeah, doubtful. Let's not get ahead of ourselves there.
We're stretching the metaphor too much. Am I?
So I just need to sort of, I guess, have more faith or more confidence in myself, and I just don't.
Yeah, I've got some ideas how we might get into that next time. But I suppose a question I have for now is, where in your life do you recognize that you do have that confidence? Because there are places you have that confidence.
I suppose to a certain extent at work. One of the things I was talking about today with my colleague who, was talking about how much work was affecting him and how much his workload was affecting him. And, I sort of said, well, I did have this conversation in a one-to-one with someone higher up the food chain who was sort of saying that, my attitude was a little bit of a problem that, not in terms of fuck you, I do sometimes do that. But, they said, well, people think you're a bit too, so some people think you might be a bit too laid back. And I was like, I don't think that's a problem. Because I am laid back to a certain extent, or at least I give the impression of being laid back. But it's, the way I explained it to this guy was, first of all, if you're getting the work done, don't come to me and tell me, my attitude. But the other thing was, and this is, I think, the difference between me and him and why I don't want to end up like him. But also what I was trying to get across to him is, some people live for work and some people work to live. And I don't live for work. I work to live. And now I may just be, as I said, sitting drinking in my pants or, reading a book in the bath or whatever. I may not be out, at Café de Paris dancing, tripping the light fantastic, but it's still, it's a life, you work a lot of the time, not because it's something you love, it's to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. And I think for him, he's that little bit older, he's in a sort of long distance relationship that's kind of been on hold because, of COVID, so he hasn't seen his girlfriend for, 2 years or whatever.
Wow.
And, I've been like, well, you've got plenty of leave, just take some leave and go see her, or, take some leave and just chill out at home, because he's got, loads and loads of leave. And he's not able to do that. And it's like, I was sort of saying about this thing about my attitude, and I was like, well, if you've had to learn to tie your shoelaces 3 times as an adult, because, because I've had strokes and stuff and they've affected me quite badly at times, and I have had to relearn a lot of sort of motor skills and stuff, and fine skills, and, things like tying my shoelaces. After every major stroke, I've had to relearn how to do that. So I was like saying, well, if you've had to do that 3 times as an adult, whether or not, someone gets the spreadsheet by 5.
Doesn't seem like the most important thing.
Yeah, it's like, fuck it. I don't care.
But here's the interesting thing, David. Someone that can relearn to tie their shoelaces 3 times in their life, and all the other, that's like a tip of the iceberg, I'm sure, of things that had to be done as part of that recovery rehabilitation process. And as someone who you're describing is able to make shit happen when you need to make shit happen at work, you have determination. You have the ability to say, I want to do this, I'm going to do this. But it's about applying that to your dating life. It's about taking some short-term pain of going, this is uncomfortable and I am outside of my comfort zone, but I know I want to get there and I'm willing to do what it takes to get there.
I think as well, though, I've had you know, bad reactions in terms of disability in dating. You know, people have sort of said, well, you know, how do you do that? I mean, I would just kill myself. And I'm like, you know, this is like speed dating. And you're like, fuck off. Or, you know.
But that says so much more about them than it does about you.
Yeah, but it really does, you know, you know, particularly if you're prone to listen to your inner critic.
Yeah, it's painful. It hurts.
Yeah. And, you know, and people have said things like that to me, or, you know, have said things and you know, about, oh, you should just get sterilised in case, you know, you know, you know, and it's like, Jesus Christ, this is like a first date. You know, so that really does knock your confidence. And, you know, there's just been a lot of experiences like that where I suppose I've come to sort of believe that kind of stuff.
And I really hear those experiences are difficult and they're painful.
Yeah.
But also, as you reflect on it and we're talking about it, how does it feel to recognize you've actually let those people influence your mindset? Because that's not the sort of people you want influencing how you think about your life.
Yeah. You know, rationally, you know, there's a part of me that thinks, you know, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't let these people get to you, or, you know, but I guess it's not a rational thing.
Yeah. It's not a rational thing. And I think putting a rational lens on it sometimes is helpful, because you go, hang on, I've had the uncomfortable, awkward, difficult experiences, but now this thing that I really want in my life is not happening because of other people's bullshit and other people's, you know, and it's like, that's then become the obstacle to you then being able to move forwards. You know, and next time we can come to some strategies and tools and sort of ways to work with that. But I think in the meantime, it's also really helpful just to recognize that ultimately a key part of the block to you progressing in this area of your life that matters is having allowed in other people's bullshit and allowed it to sort of move into your mind and make itself at home and sort of start to kind of become the primary narrative about you and relationships. Whereas actually what it is other people's crap, basically. But it's sort of, it's moved in and made itself at home in your mind.
Yeah.
Sort of needs to be told to fuck off, you know, but I think part of it is also, we can talk next time about getting access to some of the resources and some of the tools that help you access those more positive states, which are there and you are acting upon in other places in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think also it'd be helpful just to do almost continuing some of the homework we've done in the past around what comes up when you are in those situations. Like, what are the phrases the Jiminy Cricket voice is using?
Mm-hmm.
What are any of the memories that you started touching on that you're kind of replaying in your mind? Like, the more awareness we have of those pieces, also the better, because somehow then the less power they have, because you've got that conscious ability then to sort of challenge those thoughts.
Yeah. Or, you know, write them down and make them solid.
Well, the truth is these thoughts are not actually true. They've just been given too much substance, in a sense. And so I think hopefully the opposite happens. And if it doesn't, we can at least then challenge that together next time. You know, but it's like you've had some, you know, it sounds like painful and uncomfortable experiences, but you have so much to offer. You know, you deserve and have the right to be in a loving relationship, and you have a great deal to offer to the right person in that relationship, just like you have a great deal to receive from the right person in that relationship. When I say that, how does that feel to you?
Scary and a little bit fraudulent.
You feel like a fraud, or you feel like what I'm saying is not true?
I feel like you think it's true. I don't necessarily know if I do, and I think that's my problem.
And exactly, that's the heart of the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
and in a sense, the only way we find out who's right is by getting out there in the world and testing it.
Yeah.
Because I'd wager a pretty good bet that I'm right, but then I can be an arrogant sod sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm more liable just to fail on purpose now, just to win a bet.
We're a dangerous combination on this issue, aren't we?
I mean,
So shall I reverse my psychology and say, I don't think you've got what it takes, David. I don't think you can do it.
Probably. It might work better. So
I think this feels like the piece that you and I should really stay on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you absolutely have the potential to change it. And it's not radically different to what we're already doing. It's just almost putting your commitment and your intention on this piece, bringing some insights, some understanding, getting in some more of the resources that are already there.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit like the other areas, once you take enough steps forward, momentum will then carry you the rest of the way. But we need to get that forward momentum going in the first place. Do you have any questions for me today?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Well, David, it's good to see you. I'm looking forward to hearing how the third day goes, and keep putting the spotlight on it.
Mm.
Good things often come in threes, and I feel like this is the third piece that I absolutely believe you can change.
I always think like celebrities die in threes,
I mean, thankfully, neither is a celebrity, so therefore I think we're okay.
Yeah.
All right, David,
cool.
Good to see you.
Cheers.
I hope you found this week's episode helpful. It's so great to see the progress that David's made in so many different areas of his life. The challenge he's facing when it comes to dating and relationships, although, of course, we're unique in our experience, and his inner critic has this story around how disability may limit him, but we all have our own stories that get in the way of really being able to open our hearts and put ourselves out there in the ways that are going to help us attract into our lives what it is that we truly long for. And so much of that limitation is just an idea. It's what our inner critic is using to attack us and beat us up. And if we can get some freedom from that, it's amazing what becomes possible in our lives. We're curious as to what perhaps some of your story is about what gets in the way of you taking bold steps for what you want. What does your inner critic say to you which blocks you, which gets in the way? I look forward to reading your comments, and I look forward to seeing you next week on In Therapy.